The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days when Marcus Thorne received his new assignment. The droplets traced patterns down the scratched windshield of his transport vehicle, distorting the harsh lights of Detention Center 47. His scarred hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he reviewed the prisoner manifest on the dash display. Special Transfer Unit 2187. Classification, Biohazard, Subject, Female, Species, Crystalline, Destination, Research Facility Echo. The monotonous voice of the AI system paused. Confirm receipt of orders, Driver Thorne. Marcus pressed his thumb against the scanner. Confirmed. He'd done this run 100 times since the war ended. Another alien, another facility, another day of pretending the scars on his neck didn't burn when he looked at their kind. The loading bay doors groaned open, revealing 2 armed guards escorting the prisoner. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. She wasn't what he expected. Where most crystallines had rough, angular features, she seemed almost delicate. Her skin shimmered like opal in the rain, and intricate patterns of light pulsed beneath her surface, a trademark of her species' emotional state. Currently, they were dim and slow, suggesting fear or resignation. "This one's different," warned Guard Lieutenant Hammond, an old war buddy. "She's been completely docile since capture, but intel suggests she's important, high-value target." Marcus nodded, watching as they secured her in the passenger containment cell, a transparent cube reinforced with energy fields. "They're all important according to intel. What's her name?" "Calls herself Nira, no last name registered, probably not even her real designation." Hammond handed over the biometric key. "Standard protocol, no stops, no communications, straight to Echo." The prisoner Nira raised her head slightly as Marcus entered the vehicle. Her eyes were like carved amethysts, pupils expanding and contracting with the shifting light. She spoke, her voice carrying the characteristic crystalline resonance of her species, but softer than he'd heard before. "You fear me," she said simply, "yet you try to hide it." Marcus activated the containment field's dampers, standard procedure to prevent prisoner manipulation. "I don't fear anything. I transport things from point A to point B, that's all." "Things," she repeated, those strange eyes studying him. "Is that what we all are now, things?" He ignored her, initiating the startup sequence. The transport hummed to life, its heavy wheels crunching against wet gravel as they pulled away from the detention center. The first hour passed in silence, broken only by the rhythm of rain and the occasional rumble of distant thunder. They were passing through the ruins of what had once been a suburban area when the first warning came. The transport's threat detection system flickered, then died completely. Marcus felt the old combat instincts kick in. This wasn't a malfunction. "Someone's coming," Nira said quietly. "They carry death in their hearts." Before Marcus could respond, the first explosion hit. The transport lurched, skidding on the wet road. Through the chaos, he glimpsed dark figures emerging from the ruins, wearing the unmistakable insignia of the Human Purity Front, extremists who believed any cooperation with alien species meant the death of humanity. "Shut up and stay down," he barked at Nira, drawing his sidearm. The training took over: assess, adapt, survive. But they were surrounded, at least 8 heavily armed hostiles. "Your weapon won't save us," Nira said, her voice steady despite the situation. "But I can release the containment field." Marcus laughed bitterly. "So you can kill me yourself? I don't think so." Another explosion rocked the transport. Through the smoke, he saw the attackers placing charges around the vehicle. They weren't trying to capture the prisoner, this was an execution. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't warn you about the plasma mine they're placing beneath your door," Nira stated calmly. 3 seconds until detonation." Marcus hesitated for a split second, then dove across to the passenger side. The explosion tore through where he'd been sitting, sending shrapnel and superheated air through the cabin. The containment field flickered from the power surge. "You could have let me die," he gasped, ears ringing from the blast. "Death serves no one," Nira replied. Her skin was glowing brighter now, patterns shifting rapidly. "Release the field and I will show you why your people called us healers during the first contact." Another explosion, closer this time. Marcus looked at the alien prisoner, then at the approaching extremists. Everything he'd been taught, everything he'd believed about her kind, screamed against what he was about to do. He pressed his thumb to the biometric key. The containment field dissolved. Nira stood, her crystalline form catching what little light remained in the storm. She raised her hands, and the patterns beneath her skin began to pulse with increasing intensity. "Cover your eyes," she warned. The light that erupted from her was like a captured star being born. Marcus caught glimpses through his fingers, the attackers falling back, weapons dropping from suddenly nerveless hands, their own shadows burning themselves into the rain. When it was over, the extremists lay unconscious, their weapons reduced to slag. Nira swayed slightly, her glow dimming to almost nothing. That took more energy than I expected, she murmured, then collapsed. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground, surprised by how light she felt. Her skin was cool to the touch, like actual crystal, but he could feel a pulse beneath, not so different from a human heart. The rain continued to fall as he made a decision that would change everything. Instead of calling for backup, instead of following protocol, he carried her to the passenger seat of the damaged transport. I must be losing my mind, he muttered, starting the engine. Nira's eyes flickered open briefly. Sometimes, losing what we think we know is the beginning of wisdom. As they drove into the darkness, leaving the unconscious extremists behind, Marcus realized he had just become something he'd sworn never to be, a traitor to his own kind. Or maybe, just maybe, he was finally becoming the kind of human he should have been all along. The rain washed away their tracks, but nothing could erase the choice he'd made. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but for now, an alien healer and a human driver fled into the night, carrying with them a fragile hope that some bridges could be rebuilt, even in a world shattered by war. Dawn broke over the ruins of an abandoned fuel station, painting the sky in shades of sickly green, a permanent reminder of the atmospheric changes brought by the war. Marcus Thorne watched as Nira pressed her crystalline hands against the transport's damaged hull, her skin emitting a soft phosphorescent glow. The vehicle's beyond repair, she said, withdrawing her touch. The molecular structure is too compromised. Marcus checked his wrist display, watching red dots multiply across the grid. We've got bigger problems. 3 pursuit vehicles, maybe more, coming from the south. Your light show back there didn't go unnoticed. The resonance flash, Nira corrected, her voice carrying a hint of what might have been amusement. It's not meant to be a weapon, but rather a tool for cellular regeneration. Your attackers will recover, though their pride may take longer to heal. That's not making me feel better about our situation. Marcus pulled his tactical pack from the ruined transport, checking his remaining ammunition. We need to move. There's an old mining complex 2 kilometers north. Might find transport there. Nira's crystalline features shifted, creating patterns that reminded Marcus of falling snow. You're still deciding whether to trust me, even after I saved your life. Maybe I just don't fancy being court-martialed alone, he replied, but there was less bite in his words than before. Can you run? My people cross star systems before yours learn to make fire, she said, those amethyst eyes gleaming. I can run. They moved through the wasteland in silence, keeping to the shadows of twisted metal and crumbling concrete. The pursuing vehicle's engine sounds grew closer, accompanied by the distinctive whine of hover bikes. The human purity front was pulling out all the stops. They're not just after you, are they? Marcus asked as they ducked behind a fallen billboard. What makes you so special that they'd risk attacking a military transport? Nira's skin dimmed slightly, her patterns becoming more angular. What do you know of the plague? The one that's been hitting both human and alien colonies. Just rumors. Military keeps it quiet. It's more than rumors. Nira picked up a handful of red-tinted soil, letting it slip through her fingers. The plague is evolving, adapting to both our species. Your leaders believe my people created it as a final weapon. Mine believe humans released it to force us off Earth. A hover bike screamed overhead, searchlight cutting through the morning haze. Marcus pulled Nira deeper into the shadows, noticing how her skin automatically adjusted its luminescence to match their surroundings. And the truth, he whispered. The truth is, she stopped abruptly, her entire form suddenly pulsing with urgent light patterns. Down. Marcus felt crystalline hands push him aside as plasma fire erupted where they'd been standing. A figure in combat armor dropped from above, weapon charging for another shot. Traitor, the attacker spat at Marcus, helping the very creatures that murdered our families. Marcus recognized the voice. Lieutenant Reed, you're working with the front now. Someone has to make the hard choices, Reed answered, his helmet visor polarized to hide his face. The brass wants to play nice with these monsters, pretend we can all just forget what happened, but some of us remember, some of us lost everything. Not everything, Nira spoke softly, stepping forward. Her skin was starting to glow again, You still have your humanity, don't lose that too. Reed laughed, a harsh sound through his helmet's speakers. Shut up, Crystal Witch, your kind's got no right to talk about humanity. He raised his weapon. Thorn, step aside, this ends now. Marcus felt time slow down just like it used to in combat. He saw Reed's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Nira's patterns shifting into what he now recognized as defensive preparation. But he also saw something else, fear in her eyes, not for herself but for what this moment could mean for both their species. He made his choice. The shot that rang out wasn't from Reed's plasma rifle. Marcus's sidearm smoked in his hand as Reed clutched his shoulder, his weapon clattering to the ground. You're right about one thing, Marcus said, keeping his gun trained on his former comrade. Some of us did lose everything in the war. That's why we can't afford to lose anything else, including our chance to end this cycle of hatred. More engines roared in the distance. Reed's backup was coming. They'll hunt you both down, Reed groaned through clenched teeth. You're throwing away everything for one of them. No, Marcus replied, backing away with Nira. I'm finally fighting for something instead of against everything. He turned to Nira. The mining complex, can you make it? Her answer was to start running, patterns of light flowing across her form like liquid starlight. Marcus followed, leaving Reed and the echoes of his old life behind. They reached the mining complex as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows through the skeletal remains of machinery. Nira's breathing was steady, despite their sprint, but her light patterns had dimmed considerably. You're getting weaker, Marcus observed as they searched for functional transport. The resonance flash depleted more than I expected, she admitted. And there's something else. She placed her hand against a concrete wall, and Marcus watched in amazement as patterns of light spread from her touch, revealing hidden conduits and chambers within. This facility, she said, her voice tight with concern, it's not abandoned, it's active, and it's not just a mine. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, klaxons began to wail throughout the complex. Heavy doors slid shut around them as red emergency lights flooded the area. Containment protocols initiated, announced an automated voice. Biological contamination detected, all personnel evacuate immediately. Marcus turned to Nira, whose crystalline form was now pulsing with urgent patterns he'd never seen before. What's happening? The plague, she whispered, her amethyst eyes wide with recognition. It's here, and it's not natural. Someone's been engineering it using both human and crystalline DNA. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just about saving one alien prisoner anymore. They'd stumbled onto something much bigger, something that could either heal the rift between their species or tear their worlds apart forever. As containment shutters continued to seal around them, Marcus checked his ammunition and made a grim mental count of their options. They were trapped in a facility with an engineered super plague, pursued by extremists and branded as traitors by both sides. Any chance you've got another light show in you? He asked. Nira's patterns shifted into what he was starting to recognize as her version of a smile. Perhaps, but first we need to gather evidence. The truth about this place must reach both our peoples before it's too late. Marcus nodded, readying his weapon. Sometimes, he reflected, the path to redemption ran straight through hell. At least this time he wasn't walking it alone. Red emergency lights pulsed through the underground facilities corridors as Marcus and Nira made their way deeper into the complex. The air grew thicker with each level they descended, heavy with the scent of antiseptic and something else, something organic and wrong. This shouldn't exist, Nira whispered, her crystalline form dimmed to its lowest luminescence. Her patterns now moved in slow, troubled waves. The peace accords explicitly prohibited joint biological research. Marcus checked another corner before motioning her forward. Looks like someone didn't get the memo or didn't care. He paused at a security terminal, fingers flying over the keypad. These are military protocols, but different, hybrid systems. Both are technologies, Nira confirmed, placing her hand near the terminal. Patterns of light spread from her touch, interfacing with the system in ways Marcus couldn't comprehend. They've been studying us, not just our biology but our very essence. The terminal flickered, then displayed a series of classified files. Project designations scrolled past, Operation Harmony, Project Genesis, the Unity Protocol. But it was the last file that made Nira's patterns freeze in a terrible stillness. Project Prometheus, she read, her voice barely audible. They named it after your myth of stealing fire from the gods, how fitting. Marcus scanned the document, his face hardening with each line. This can't be right. According to this, the plague wasn't a weapon gone wrong. It was engineered to force evolution. Not evolution, Nira corrected, her patterns now pulsing with anger. Synthesis. They're trying to merge our species at a cellular level, create a hybrid that could survive what's coming. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, alarms blared again. New messages flashed across the terminal. Containment breach in Sector 7. Emergency protocols engaged. We need to move, Marcus said, downloading what data he could to his tactical unit. Whatever's down here is already aware of us, Nira finished. Her patterns had shifted to a configuration he'd never seen before, one that spoke of ancient instincts and deep fear. They're coming. They ran through the maze of corridors, passing laboratories filled with equipment both familiar and alien. Through observation windows, Marcus caught glimpses of things that defied description: crystalline structures growing from organic matter, human tissue laced with luminescent patterns. Wait, Nira called suddenly, stopping at a heavily reinforced door. There's someone. Her patterns flared and the door's security system sparked and died. Inside, they found a chamber filled with stasis pods. Most were empty, but one at the far end pulsed with a weak light. Inside floated a figure that made Marcus's breath catch. It was neither human nor crystalline, but something in between, skin that shifted between flesh and crystal, patterns of light that moved like blood through veins. They succeeded, Nira whispered, pressing her hands against the pod's surface. But at what cost? The pain readings from this being. Is it alive? Barely, and in agony, her patterns shifted to deep blues and purples. This is why I was brought here. They needed more test subjects, more raw material. Marcus checked his tactical display. Multiple heat signatures were converging on their position. We've got company coming, lots of it. Nira's eyes never left the hybrid being. I can ease its suffering, end it cleanly, but I'll need energy more than I have left. Do it, Marcus said without hesitation, understanding what she wasn't saying. I'll buy you time. He took up position at the door as Nira began to glow, her patterns accelerating into frequencies he could barely track. Behind him, he heard what might have been a sigh of relief, then silence as the pod's life signs flatlined. It's done, Nira said, her voice heavy. It chose to share its memories with me at the end. I know the truth now, all of it. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Marcus readied his weapon. Want to share with the class. The plague, the war, all of it, it was preparation. Her patterns had taken on an urgent rhythm. There's something coming, Marcus, something that threatens both our species. The scientists here knew. They thought forcing our evolution was the only way to survive it. What's coming? Before she could answer, the door burst open. But instead of soldiers or security forces, they faced something far worse. Human figures in contamination suits moved with jerky, unnatural motions. Through their faceplates, Marcus could see patterns of light dancing beneath their skin. Failed experiments, Nira breathed, the ones who didn't survive the synthesis. The creatures lurched forward, their movements becoming more coordinated with each step. Behind them came the sound of more approaching, many more. Options, Marcus asked, backing away. Nira's patterns had taken on a fierce brightness. There's a central research core 2 levels down. If we can reach it, I can access the facility's main systems. Show everyone what's been happening here. And the welcoming committees. The failed synthetics are drawn to crystalline energy. I can act as a lure, lead them away. Not happening, Marcus cut her off. We do this together or not at all. A strange expression crossed Nira's features, surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. Her patterns shifted into a configuration that seemed almost warm. Together then, she agreed, but you should know, what I'm about to do, it's forbidden by my people's highest laws. Marcus smiled grimly as the failed experiments closed in. Guess that makes 2 outlaws, after you, partner. Nira's form began to pulse with building energy. This time, instead of a flash, the light streamed from her in controlled ribbons, wrapping around the synthetic creatures. They reached for it, distracted from their original targets. The core, she said through gritted teeth. Run. They sprinted past the entranced experiments, deeper into the facility's depths. Behind them, Marcus heard inhuman sounds of pursuit, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. Because looking back meant questioning everything he'd ever believed about his mission, his species, his world. And right now, all that mattered was getting to that core, and exposing a truth that would either save their peoples or tear them apart forever. As they descended toward the facility's heart, Marcus realized something that should have terrified him but instead gave him strength. He trusted this alien more than he'd trusted anyone since the war began. Whatever they found in the core, whatever was coming for their worlds, they would face it together. The sound of their pursuers grew closer as they reached the final level. Ahead loomed massive doors marked with radiation warnings in both human and crystalline script. Beyond those doors lay answers, and possibly doom for them both. "Ready?" Marcus asked, checking his weapon one last time. Nira's patterns pulsed with determination, ready to change everything. The research core's massive doors groaned open to reveal a sight that stopped both Marcus and Nira in their tracks. The chamber was a perfect sphere, its walls covered in crystalline growths that pulsed with the same patterns as Nira's skin. But these patterns were wrong, corrupted, bleeding into the organic matter that grew between them. By the first light, Nira breathed, her own patterns flickering with horror. They didn't just study our essence, they harvested it. Marcus moved to the central console, trying to ignore the way the walls seemed to breathe. "Can you interface with it? We're running out of time." The sounds of their pursuers echoed through the corridors behind them. The failed synthetics were getting closer, drawn to the concentrated crystalline energy in the core. Nira placed her hands on the console, and immediately her patterns synchronized with the room's corrupted light. Her face contorted in pain. "The data, it's too much. They've been doing this for years, long before the war. Both sides," she gasped. "Both sides knew." "Knew what?" "That we were created by the same beings, the architects. They seeded both our species, designed us to be compatible." Her patterns swirled with grief. The war, the hatred, it was all based on a lie. The first of the synthetic creatures reached the doorway, their movements more coordinated now, more purposeful. Marcus fired warning shots, but they kept coming. "Why?" he demanded, backing toward Nira. "Why hide the truths?" "Because of what's coming." Nira's voice had taken on an odd resonance, as if other voices were speaking through her. "The architects are returning, and they're not coming as creators this time, but as harvesters. Both our species were experiments, and now they're coming to collect the results." Images flashed across the chamber's walls, massive ships at the edge of solar systems, worlds going dark, entire species disappearing. The dates on the footage showed these events were happening now, at the fringes of known space. The synthesis program, Marcus realized. They were trying to create something strong enough to fight back. "But they became what they feared," Nira said, "harvesters themselves, taking without consent, destroying lives in the name of survival." Her patterns suddenly flared with alarm. "Marcus, behind you." He spun to find Lieutenant Reed standing in the doorway, his armor now corrupted by crystalline growths. More failed synthetics crowded behind him. "Should have killed you both when I had the chance," Reed's voice crackled through damaged speakers. "But now we can all be part of the solution." "Reed, you're infected," Marcus tried. "Let us help." "Help?" Reed laughed, the sound distorted by his transformation. "Like you helped our species by turning traitor, the synthesis is the only way forward, the only way to survive what's coming. They showed us the truth." "They showed you what you wanted to see," Nira countered, her patterns bright with conviction. "Fear turned to hate, hate to desperation, but there's another way." She turned back to the console, her energy flowing into the facility's systems. Around them, the corrupted patterns began to shift, responding to her presence. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked. "What my people should have done from the start, sharing instead of hiding, healing instead of harming." Her eyes met his. "But I can't do it alone." Marcus understood. He holstered his weapon and placed his hands beside hers on the console. The moment he did, something extraordinary happened. The crystalline patterns recognized him, not as an enemy, not as something to be changed, but as a complementary force. Where Nira's energy flowed like light, his presence grounded it, gave it form and direction. Reed and the synthetics surged forward, but they were too late. The combined resonance of human and crystalline energy pulsed through the facility's systems, not destroying the corruption but transforming it, healing it. The failed synthetics collapsed, their forced mutations revering. Reed fell to his knees as the crystalline growths receded from his armor, leaving him gasping but human. "How?" he choked out. "Because we chose to trust," Nira said simply, "not to change each other but to understand." Her patterns had taken on a new configuration, one that seemed to bridge the gap between organic and crystalline. The architects didn't make us compatible so we could become one species. They made us compatible so we could stand together. Marcus felt the truth of it in the energy still flowing through the console. The data is transmitting to both our governments. Everything, the synthesis program, the architects, all of it. They'll try to bury it, Reed warned, his voice weak but clear. Let them try, Marcus smiled grimly. Some truths refuse to stay buried. As if in response to his words, the facility's systems began to overload, the corrupted sections breaking down under the strain of the healing resonance. We need to go, Nira urged. This place, its time is over. Marcus helped Reed to his feet. What about the synthetics? Those who can be saved will be the rest. She looked at the fallen figures with sadness. Sometimes healing means letting go. They made their way out of the facility as it collapsed behind them, carrying with them the truth about their past and possibly the key to their future. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when they faced their own people with what they'd learned. And somewhere out there in the darkness between stars, the architects were coming. The war between humans and crystallines was over. The fight for survival was about to begin. 3 days after the facility's destruction, Marcus stood before the Joint Species Council in what had once been Geneva. Through the chamber's transparent dome, he could see the perpetual green aurora that now painted Earth's skies, a reminder of how much had already changed. Nira stood beside him, her crystalline form drawing suspicious murmurs from both human and alien representatives. But she held herself with quiet dignity, her patterns flowing in calm, measured waves. You understand the gravity of your actions, Council Leader Durham began, her voice cutting through the whispers. You've violated multiple sections of the peace accords, exposed classified research, and if your transmitted data is to be believed, incited potential panic about these architects. The data speaks for itself, Marcus replied steadily. Both our governments knew about the synthesis program, both chose to continue it despite the cost in lives. To ensure survival, countered Delegate Shamara, her silvered hair reflecting the aurora's light. If what you found is true, if the architects are returning, then we need to stand together, Nira interrupted, her voice carrying that subtle resonance that demanded attention. Not as a single hybrid species, but as allies, different yet complementary. Pretty words, Durham scoffed, but you're both compromised, the crystalline energy exposure. Showed us the truth you've been hiding, Marcus finished. That humans and crystallines aren't natural enemies, we're not even separate experiments, we're two halves of the same equation. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small data crystal salvaged from the facility's core. This contains the original genetic templates. The architects didn't design us to fight each other. They designed us to protect each other. The crystal pulsed with soft light as Nira's patterns synchronized with it. Images filled the chamber, star maps, genetic codes, and finally, a message left by the first of their kinds to discover the truth. We are the fire and the light, read the ancient text displayed in both human and crystalline script. Separated by design, united by choice. When the creators return as destroyers, only together will we survive. Choice, Nira emphasized, her patterns brightening. Not forced synthesis, not genetic manipulation, the choice to trust, to understand, to stand together. Warning signals suddenly blared throughout the chamber. On every screen, deep space sensors showed multiple objects emerging from fold space, massive structures that defied normal physics. The architects, Shamara breathed, they're here. No, Durham corrected, her face pale as she read the incoming data. They're everywhere, simultaneous appearances in every major system. This is an invasion. Marcus felt Nira's energy shift beside him, responding to his own rising tension. Without thinking, he took her crystalline hand. Where once he would have flinched from the contact, now it felt natural, right. You've seen what forced unity creates, he addressed the council. You've seen the products of fear and desperation, now see what choice looks like. Together they approached the chamber's central platform. As one, they placed their hands on the crystalline surface. Energy flowed between them, not corrupted, not synthetic, but harmonious. The platform responded, ancient systems awakening to their combined presence. The architects left us weapons, Nira explained as the chamber hummed with power. Not guns or ships, but understanding, the ability to resonate across our differences, to amplify each other's strengths. Through the dome, they could see lights appearing in the sky, defense platforms that had lain dormant since before the war, responding to the union of human determination and crystalline energy. "We don't have time for debates or committees," Marcus told the stunned council. "The architects are coming to harvest what they created. Our only chance is to prove we've grown beyond their design, that we've learned to choose our own path." Durham looked from the awakening defenses to the approaching architect ships, then back to the unlikely pair before her. "And if we make the wrong choice?" "There are no wrong choices," Nira said softly, her patterns forming the configuration for hope. "Only the choices we make together or the ones we fail to make at all." The chamber fell silent as the council members exchanged looks. Above them, the aurora pulsed stronger, as if responding to the moment's gravity. Finally, Durham stood. "What do you need from us?" Marcus smiled, feeling Nira's energy harmonize with his own growing certainty. "Everything," he said simply, "and everyone, because tomorrow's dawn will rise on either a united stand against our creators or it won't rise at all." As if in answer, the first shots were fired in high orbit, the architect's harvest ships meeting unexpected resistance. The war for tomorrow had begun. But this time, humanity wouldn't fight alone. This time, the light and the fire would face the darkness together. And somewhere in the space between stars and species, between duty and trust, between what was designed and what was chosen, a new future waited to be born.